Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pro AV Today. I am your host, Ben Thomas. And one of my favorite ways that people have gotten into the AV industry over the years is through professional audio. But when you see new people get into the industry these days, sometimes they don't understand maybe the challenges, some of the legacy hardware, best practices, terms that legacy pro audio world brings in. So, wanted to have a conversation today to not only look back just a little bit on the history of the pro audio world in our Pro AV community, but also talk about some of the best practices that we can pull forward into our current world, especially as we have conversations around streamlined signal flow and Dante and things like that. Really looking forward to having our next guest on the show today. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. That's Mark Corbin, president over at Vanco International. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks for having me, buddy. I look forward to it.
Well, hey, I'm looking forward to asking some of the questions and grabbing your insight today. But really, before we get started, wanted to give you a chance to set the table. How did you kind of break into the industry, and what are some of the ways that the pro audio world manifested itself in your life?
Yeah, sure. So Vanco has been a audio video manufacturer for, over 50 years. We've been in business since 1951. Back when not much digital ever existed, right? But we've been in the audio video world significantly recently. We've gotten even more into the audio world with the acquisition of Beale Street Audio, which is a speaker company, as well as an amplification company. We also started a brand called Pulse Audio, and we have the privilege of being the global licensee for Monster cables for the Pro musician market nationwide. So it's been a really big transition for Vanco to really understand pro audio and also learn the manufacturing aspects of it as well, and the importance of cabling and everything that goes behind it. So it's been a really good run for Vanco. We've had a lot of great support on the dealers and the distribution side, and we've really enjoyed the category, and it's been a major growth category. I think as you talk to a lot of people in the industry, the pro audio continues to grow. So,
well, Mark, obviously that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show, right? You guys, not only at Vanco but yourself personally, have such great experience and a wealth of knowledge, all the way back to the 50s and 60s when we were talking about the original two-wire systems and building PAs, and it's so funny to look back at that world and see where we are now and see how something like an iPhone now has the output that, some of our old full speaker rig systems had, 20, 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's come a long way, and it's going to continue to come a long way. So it's been an interesting shift, even from, when music was getting created to how it's even now engineered. So it's been a really interesting process.
Well, and wanted to ask too, Mark, when you even think about pro audio, that industry, that term has been around, I don't know, probably 70, 80 years now, going back to the original recording days, recording studios and amplification days. But, at least in the larger purview of the world, right? You look at the late 50s and 60s as kind of this massive turning point of large-scale concerts and PA systems, and you look at Woodstock, right, and you talk about that PA system. That's a whole different conversation. If you ever get bored, if you're listening to this, go look up the history of the Woodstock PA. It's kind of ridiculous. But when you talk about some of those legacy systems, right, what are some of the ways that you've seen those legacy systems, those legacy cabling, in connector worlds? How have they impacted the current world today, right? Is it much more impactful than we might realize, or is it something that we've kind of moved on largely from?
Well, I think, and I assume you're probably talking from like more of an analog to a digital perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting. We all think in the digital world, especially in audio, that it's completely better, right? But what's really interesting about audio is that audio from an analog signal is built in what we call a sound wave, right? So it's going to travel up and down, just like a normal wave would that you would see. Where digital sound is basically put together in numbers, ones and zeros. They're coding, right? So when you talk digital and analog sound, a lot of your original, let's say if you're using instruments per se, specifically guitars, pianos, basses, some kind of instrument like that, you're going to have a lot of original analog audio, which is where you can see that constant wave of what's coming in. Now, what the digital world has done is been able to take that awesome analog signal and take it and enhance it, right? We all know what Dolby Digital is. Dolby Digital is a lab, right? It's not like Dolby Digital has a cable, right? Dolby Digital is a certified lab. So what digital's done is taken basically an analog signal that could have been originally recorded and enhance it. And those features can enhance anything from bringing up the treble to balancing the bass to balancing the sound, right? So that's why the two actually coexist so much, and that's why it's so important. To a normal ear, I think digital audio is probably going to be more clean sounding, if you want to call it that, meaning you can tell that it's been very clean sound. You're not going to hear a lot of reverbs. You're not going to hear a lot of fingers on bass guitars or guitars. You're not going to hear a lot of maybe we want to call effects from the instruments as much because it's more digitally enhanced. But if you go back to some of your old audio analog signals, you're going to hear, even on some old albums that have still been digitally created, you're going to hear those old, true, rich sounds that you get from those analogs because basically it's a wave coming in and recording that.
I
So
knew we were going to
both are
get in there
very,
and talk about warmth. I just knew it was going to happen. It's the age-old argument, but
yes, yes.
it's funny to be able to look back at that discussion and look at it with a little bit of context and clarity now, right? Where you talk about those old school audio purists who everything was analog, and now we have transparently a mostly digital world, right? But you look at DAWs and you look at even a lot of the way that audio signals transmitted now, whether that's through Dante, Cat6 cables over network. It's so interesting to see how that world has evolved, right? We've really adapted a lot of digital technologies. And one of the things that I wanted to ask too, and I'm going to get flack probably for asking this question, not from you, but from some people in the community. I actually kind of consider HDMI as a pro audio cable. I'm going to get torched for that, and I'm so sorry. But the reality is, right, you look at some of these cabling structures and the introduction to digital multimedia, whether it be digital TV, digital audio, but a lot of that actually was driven from the consumer side, which is interesting enough. Talk about how that consumer world and that even some of the prosumer world has impacted some of our transitions and adoption of newer technology in the audio world.
Yeah, I mean, sure. We developed a ton of HDMI cable. It's probably one of our largest categories. Let's face it, the biggest issue you had from an HDMI cable was the fact that holy cow, someone finally figured out how to do audio and video all in one. I mean, that was the biggest thing, right? It was to be able to solve that issue of, well, I'm running my RGB red, green, blue cable before HDMI came out, but yet I'm still got to run my audio.
The RCA purists are going to kill you for this.
Right. But that was the point, right, of HDMI, and as they did that, it became a digital signal. I think for the consumer and the end user, it's just become easier, right? It has definitely become easier. I do not think that HDMI carries the greatest audio signal by any means because it is compressed. So therefore, it's going to change the sound of like a pure analog or even a pure just sound left-right cable. It's going to sound a little different for those who can tell. But the HDMI world made it easier for people, and it made it easier if you're also distributing audio to multiple locations, that you're still able to at least get the video and the audio down to one unit, whether it be a receiver or some kind of, whatever your whole house distribution or a whole commercial distribution amplifier. It's just able to get one cable down and make things easier. And that's been a big change in our world ever since what? Let's face it, late 2000s. That's when it really became prevalent. And I think moving forward, though, you still see a lot of audio connections separate from HDMI. And I think a lot of it's because, certain things don't need the video side of things, so we only want the audio side of things. So I see both cables still being prevalent, whether you have HDMI or not. But it sure as heck has made it a lot easier to carry both signals on one cable.
It has, and I want to kind of stick on that consumer innovation side, really informing the pro audio world. And you look really that's manifested itself obviously in the HDMIs of the world, but one of the places that has manifested itself heavily is in what I'll call wireless audio, right? And I'm not exactly talking about RF technology, which has been around for a while and is in most of your wireless microphones and things like that. I'm more referencing Wi-Fi audio, Bluetooth audio, things like that, which were curse words in the pro audio industry as recent as 5 years ago, and for some people still is. But talk about how the impact of that Bluetooth and that wireless and that Wi-Fi technology actually has allowed us as a community to expand, to reach different people, and to really embrace new technologies.
Yeah, I mean, so wireless has come a long way in multiple ways, right? Multiple facets, whether you say it's just pure audio between speakers or whether you say it's stage performance, right? I mean, pro audio has made a huge difference. Like currently we manufacture guitar cables, but we're also looking and we're trying to manufacture wireless guitar stuff, you know? So the biggest thing with wireless is you do risk the chance of latency and impedance, right? So whenever you're dealing with wireless audio, you have you're usually either relying on a internet base or you're also relying on a signal base that's connected from A to B. Bluetooth creates a lot of problems if there is a lot of people involved. It has trouble transmitting certain distances, right? We all know the disadvantages of Bluetooth. And then from a dedicated internet, Wi-Fi audio, that's come an extreme long way. I think if you're looking at venues in the future where they can have a dedicated router, a dedicated internet source, and they know that they control the wireless audio, it's going to become bigger and bigger. When you're working off of radio frequencies, you're right, you're talking a lot different, but it's still very similar. It's still a controlled atmosphere, and that's what's so important with the wireless audio. The Bluetooth stuff, personally, that is more um, quick connection, I would call, or like quick options for audio. But as far as commercial and industrial pro audio, we're not. I don't see a ton of Bluetooth use. But we are seeing more and more wireless Wi-Fi audio. And as you know, Dante is a perfect example of how that commercial audio has grown so much. Sonos is another great example, right? We all know Sonos, we all know Hios, we all know those brands that have changed wireless audio even. And but a lot of that still uses wired technology through amps. So that's still such an interesting part of this audio world is as much wireless audio we use, we're still filling a lot of it or sending signals with wired sources. So it's still a big mix. It really is.
Well, it is, and what I love to see about our industry is that pro audio really means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? When I say pro audio, that might mean live event, front of house mixer, full PA setup. For others, that might mean enterprise audio in a business, or for another person, that might mean a studio setup where they have a DAW and full routed audio to each of their control rooms, right? So it means a lot of different things. But what's interesting is that eh, I hate to say this, but jumping back to my last point, where the consumer world has actually incredibly influenced what audio technologies, what pro audio technologies are being used, especially when you think about uh, power users and audiophiles and people who are aging into the workforce, right? People who now have access with their iPhone or their computer or whatever piece of technology to create music, to create spatial environments with spatial audio. And you talk about the Dolby technology. There's so many different ways that people are creating that transparently, it seems like a lot of these legacy systems are kind of archaic and dinosaurs. But talk about some of the ways that you've seen the consumer and audiophile culture really creep in and start to make a massive impact in the pro audio world.
Yeah, I mean, home recording alone, right? Home recording's become huge. The capability to have basically a studio in a single, 6 by 6 room is crazy. It was hard to do that a long time ago, right? Whatever you're recording, whether it be music or podcasts or anything, correct? I mean, it's just changed a lot. I think the consumer base is going to continue to grow that category. I think there's going to be more and more upcoming technologies to be able to produce audio at even a faster rate, be able to record better at home. I think that's going to continue. What's really interesting though, as we go back to is, when you're doing a lot of that engineering or recording, you're using cabling though. That's still the craziest part, right? I mean, if you're using a mic, you're probably using cabling, especially when you're recording and engineering. So I see a lot of the systems and the elements of the recording becoming more and more wireless and easier to use. But what's so unique about it is I still see the analog feature of everyone still needing to get that signal into whatever they're recording to. And what's really cool is with uploading and even Dolby effects, you're capable of recording and making audio really unique to how you want it, even within your own capability, which that's only going to increase, Ben. I mean, these companies like, Parasound and some of these larger guys that are trying to, and even if you look at Macintosh, some of their recording software that they have for in-home, it's crazy what you're capable of doing by yourself now compared to what the world used to be. And I heard the same thing coming into work today, on the radio. It was the same conversation of it's amazing how many, self-made systems there are out there now compared to what there used to be 20 years ago.
Well, look, I always use the example and kind of laugh. We talk about the idea of the kid in their room or the kid in their parents' basement making music. When you look at so many superstars these days who started that way, it's encouraging for me, not only from a musical perspective, right, but just from the future of our industry, right? We have so many people at a much younger age than many of us even started, familiarizing themselves with concepts, with tools, with best practices. And you know what? At the end of the day, they might not know something as simple as over-undering a cable, right? Which is essential knowledge in the pro audio world. But man, they're a lot more equipped to join the workforce than we were at that age. So I'll give you the last word here, Mark. If there was one thing or one piece of advice that you had to those people who are aging into our workforce and joining the Pro AV community through that pro audio and consumer audio world, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a tough one. All right.
We didn't pre-plan this either, so I'm throwing you a small curveball.
My biggest thing was I would say the biggest thing is really learn this, digital wave that is being created and understand how it works. But don't forget the importance of, the analog signal and how it can also create even more possibilities once you get that analog signal in, and learn the difference between the two, because if you mix the two together, it can be really unique. And that goes for anything, whether that's, to your point, recording, whether that's a system throughout a store or a restaurant. You really need to familiarize yourself with the difference between digital and analog, because combining the two can become really unique and creative. And the world is out there for you to be able to do that, and there's so many systems that allow you to do that.
Well, Mark, look, we appreciate you coming on the show today. That's incredible advice. And I want to say, for all those people out there saying that we didn't mention retail and hospitality and all of that, you guys are part of Pro Audio too, right? Just get over it. You're part of it. But yeah. Mark Corbin from Vanco. Mark, we appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate the invite, and it was a really fun conversation, man.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and thank you for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe and watch Pro AV Today next time.